The transport ship descended through the purple clouds of Velthara, and Jiho Kim felt his stomach tighten with nervousness. He had been a diplomat for 8 years, but this was different. This was humanity's first official meeting with the Karviks, and everyone said the Karviks were dangerous. Through the viewport, he could see the alien city below. Massive stone towers rose from red sand, connected by bridges that glowed with blue light. The architecture was sharp and angular, like the teeth of some great beast. Nothing soft. Nothing welcoming. "Landing in 2 minutes," the pilot announced over the intercom. Jiho looked at his small team. There was Yunji Park, his second-in-command, who was reviewing notes on her datapad with intense focus. Next to her sat Doyun, their security officer, checking his equipment for the 10th time. Across from them was Taijin, their engineer and tech specialist, who looked more excited than nervous. "Remember," Jiho said, keeping his voice calm and steady, "we are here to talk. We show respect. We learn their customs. No sudden movements, no raised voices. We represent all of humanity today." Yunji nodded without looking up. "The Karviks value strength and honor above everything else. They are warriors. They have conquered 12 planets in their sector. We need to show we are not weak, but we also need to show we are not threatening them." "That is a very thin line to walk," Doyun muttered. The ship touched down with a gentle thud. Through the viewport, Jiho could see a group of Karviks waiting on the landing platform. They were tall, at least 7 feet, with scales that shimmered green and gold in the sunlight. Their bodies were muscular and powerful, built like predators. Each one wore armor made of dark metal, and each one carried weapons at their sides. "Here we go," Jiho said, standing up and straightening his formal diplomatic uniform. His hands were sweating, but he forced himself to appear confident. The exit ramp lowered, and hot air rushed into the ship. It smelled strange, like copper and spices Jiho had never encountered before. He walked down the ramp first, as protocol demanded. His team followed close behind. The Karviks delegation stood in a perfect line, watching them with eyes that had vertical pupils like a cat. At the center of the line stood a female Karviks who was clearly the leader. Her scales were a deeper purple than the others, and her armor was more ornate, with symbols carved into the metal. Jiho stopped at a respectful distance and bowed slightly. The way Earth diplomats had agreed would show respect without showing submission. "Greetings. I am Jiho Kim, representing the United Earth Council. We come in peace and friendship, hoping to establish good relations between our peoples." The purple-scaled Karviks stared at him for a long moment. Her face was difficult to read, reptilian features showing little emotion. Then she spoke, and her voice was deep and sharp, like stones grinding together. She spoke in her own language, harsh and full of clicking sounds. A small device on Jiho's collar beeped, and then translated her words into English. "I am Arin, daughter of Karvax the Undefeated, commander of the 3rd Legion, defender of the sacred stones. You are humans. You are small. You are weak. Why should we waste our time speaking with you?" Jiho felt his team tense behind him, but he kept his expression neutral. This was a test. He had been warned about this. The Karviks always tested new species, probing for weakness. "We may be small," Jiho replied carefully, "but we have traveled the stars just as you have. We have survived countless challenges on our home world. We seek not to challenge your strength, but to learn from it. And perhaps we have knowledge that might interest you as well." Princess Arin tilted her head slightly, a gesture that might have been curiosity. "Knowledge? What knowledge could your species possibly possess that we would need?" Before Jiho could answer, she turned and began walking toward the massive gates that led into the city. "Follow. My father will decide if you are worth our time." The humans followed, walking through streets made of smooth red stone. Karvik citizens stopped to stare at them, their vertical pupils widening with curiosity or narrowing with suspicion. Jiho noticed that many of them touched weapons at their belts as the humans passed. This was not a peaceful society. This was a culture built on combat and conquest. They entered a great hall carved from a single enormous piece of black stone. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into shadow, and thin beams of colored light fell through crystal windows far above. At the far end of the hall sat a massive Carvix on a throne made of some kind of bone or ivory. His scales were dark red, almost black, and covered in scars that told of many battles. This was clearly the ruler, Arin's father. The princess led them to the center of the hall and then stepped aside. Jiho moved forward alone, as planned. He bowed again, deeper this time. "Great Carvax, I bring greetings from Earth and—" "Enough," the ruler interrupted, his voice booming through the hall. "You speak too many soft words. My daughter says you claim to have knowledge we might want. Prove it, or leave our world. We do not waste time with creatures who have nothing to offer." Jiho glanced at Taejin, who quickly pulled out a hollow projector. An image appeared in the air between them and the throne, showing star charts and mathematical equations. Taejin began explaining some of humanity's discoveries about quantum tunneling and faster-than-light travel, technologies the Carvix had not yet mastered. For a few minutes, it seemed to be going well. The ruler leaned forward slightly, showing interest. Some of the Carvix warriors in the hall moved closer to see the projections better. But then Princess Arin stepped forward suddenly, interrupting Taejin. She said something sharp in her language, and the translator struggled to keep up. The gist was clear, though. She was arguing that this was a trick, that the humans were trying to deceive them with false promises of technology they did not really possess. "These creatures are liars," Arin declared, turning to face Jiho directly. "They show us pretty lights and numbers, but they have no proof. They are trying to make themselves seem more important than they are. This is an insult to us, to our time, to our honor." Jiho raised his hands in a calming gesture. "Princess, we are not trying to deceive you. We can provide proof. We can show you test results. We can—" "Silence!" Arin's hand moved to the weapon at her side, a long blade that hummed with energy. That was when Doyen made his mistake. Seeing the princess reach for her weapon, seeing her move toward Jiho in what looked like an aggressive posture, the security officer did what he was trained to do. He stepped forward quickly and raised his arm in a defensive position, his hand moving toward his own sidearm. The reaction from the Carvix was instant and explosive. Every warrior in the hall drew their weapons at once. The sound of metal and energy blades being unsheathed echoed through the massive space. The ruler stood from his throne, roaring something in his language that needed no translation. It was anger. Pure anger. Princess Arin moved faster than Jiho thought possible. She was suddenly right in front of him, her violet eyes blazing with fury. Her scaled hand was raised, claws extended, positioned near his throat but not quite touching. Behind her, at least 30 Carvix warriors had their weapons pointed at the human delegation. Time seemed to slow down. Jiho could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. He could see the individual scales on Arin's face, the way they caught the colored light from above. He could see the tension in her muscles, coiled and ready to strike. This was it. First contact had gone horribly wrong. In seconds, there would be violence, and humanity's first meeting with the Carvix would end in blood. Jiho's mind raced, searching desperately for the right words, the right gesture, anything that might prevent disaster. And then, acting purely on instinct, on some deep human impulse to comfort and calm, he did something completely unexpected. He reached up and gently placed his hand on top of Princess Arin's head. The moment Jiho's palm made contact with the crown of Princess Arin's head, everything changed. It was not a dramatic change at first. It was small and strange and deeply unsettling in its suddenness. Arin went completely still. Her raised hand, which had been poised near Jiho's throat with claws extended, froze in midair. Her mouth, which had been open to speak or perhaps to roar a command, closed slowly. Her violet eyes, which had been narrow with anger and suspicion, went wide. The vertical pupils expanded until they were almost round, like a human's eyes in dim light. Jiho kept his hand where it was, though every survival instinct in his body was screaming at him to run. He had no idea why he had done this. It was not part of any diplomatic training. It was not a calculated move. It was pure instinct, the kind of gesture humans use to calm crying children or comfort frightened friends. A touch on the head. Simple. Gentle. Human. For 3 heartbeats, nothing else happened. The hall was silent except for the faint hum of charged weapons. Then Jiho noticed something impossible. The Karvik's warrior closest to him was lowering his weapon, not quickly, not with any sense of defeat, but slowly, almost reverently. His eyes were fixed on Jiho's hand where it rested on the princess's head. Then another warrior lowered his weapon, and another. The sound of metal and energy blades being deactivated rippled through the hall like a wave. One by one, every single Karvik's warrior was disarming themselves. But they were not simply putting their weapons away, they were dropping to one knee. Their heads were bowing low, their right hands were crossing over their chests in what was clearly some kind of salute or sign of deep respect. Even the ruler, the massive, scarred Karvax himself, was rising from his throne, and his expression had transformed from anger to something Jiho could not quite identify. Shock, perhaps, or awe, or fear. Jiho's team stood frozen behind him. He could hear Yunji's sharp intake of breath. He could sense Doyun's confusion as the security officer tried to understand why the aliens who had been threatening them moments ago were now kneeling on the stone floor. Princess Arin made a sound, soft and strange, almost like a whimper. It was so unexpected from such a fierce warrior that Jiho instinctively moved his hand, worried he had somehow hurt her. The moment he lifted his palm from her head, Arin sucked in a deep breath as if she had been underwater and was finally reaching the surface. She stumbled backward a step, her hand going to her chest, her eyes still impossibly wide. She stared at Jiho, not with anger now, not with suspicion, but with something that looked like recognition mixed with disbelief. "You," she whispered, and her voice was shaking. "You are... How is this possible?" Before Jiho could respond, an old Karvix emerged from the shadows at the side of the hall. He was smaller than the others, his scales faded to a dull gray, his movements slow with age. But the way the other Karvix parted for him, the way even the ruler turned to look at him with respect, told Jiho that this was someone very important. The old Karvix approached slowly, his eyes fixed on Jiho with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable. He stopped a few feet away and spoke in a voice that was scratchy, but clear. The translator device on Jiho's collar worked to convert his words. "The ancient bond," the elder said. "It has returned. After all these generations, all these centuries of waiting and wondering if the stories were true, it has returned." Jiho found his voice, though it came out more uncertain than he wanted. I don't understand. What bond? What did I do?" The elder tilted his head and studied Jiho with those vertical pupil eyes. "You do not know? Your people have forgotten?" "Forgotten what?" Yunji stepped forward, her diplomatic training overriding her shock. "Please, honored elder, we mean no disrespect, but we truly do not understand what just happened. Can you explain?" The old Karvix looked at her, then back at Jiho, then at Princess Arin, who was still standing several feet away, still touching her chest as if checking that her heart was still beating. The elder made a decision. "Come," he said. "All of you. There are things you must know, things you must see. This is not a conversation for the Great Hall." The ruler, Carvax, nodded his massive head in agreement. He gestured with one clawed hand, and several warriors immediately moved to form an escort around the humans. But it was different now. They were not prisoners. They were not even guests. They were being treated with a kind of careful reverence that made Jiho deeply uncomfortable. The elder led them through corridors carved into the black stone, past rooms filled with training warriors, and past windows that looked out over the red sands of the planet. Finally, they reached a smaller chamber with walls covered in carvings and paintings. The images were old, worn smooth by time, but still visible. The elder gestured for them to sit on low benches arranged around the room. Princess Erin entered last, still looking shaken, and took a position standing near the wall rather than sitting. She kept glancing at Jiho as if he might disappear if she looked away. "I am Counselor Thix," the elder began. "I am the keeper of the old stories, the guardian of the ancient texts. What I tell you now, young humans, is not legend. It is not myth. It is our history." He moved to one of the walls and traced his clawed finger over a carving. It showed Carvic's figures, but they looked different from the proud warriors Jiho had seen. These carved Carvics appeared sick, twisted, their postures suggesting pain and madness. "Long ago, before we were the empire you see today, we were a broken people," Thix said. "We suffered from something we called the rage storms. Our minds would turn against us. We would become violent without cause, attacking our own families, destroying our own cities. We were dying out, generation by generation. Our population fell to dangerous levels. We believed we would go extinct." He moved to another carving, this one showing different figures. They were smaller, softer, with rounded heads and no scales. Jiho felt his breath catch. They looked almost human. "Then they came," Thix continued. "The soft ones. That is what we called them in our language. They arrived in ships we could not understand, ships that moved like water through space. They were not warriors. They carried no weapons. But they had a gift." The elder's finger traced over an image showing one of the soft ones reaching up to touch the head of a Carvix. Around them, other Carvix were kneeling, just as the warriors had done in the hall moments ago. "Their touch could calm the rage storms," Thix said, his voice soft with something like reverence. "When they placed their hands upon our heads, the violence in our minds would quiet. The pain would ease. For the first time in generations, we could think clearly. We could be at peace." Teijin leaned forward, his engineer's mind already working on the problem. "Some kind of neural effect? A biochemical response?" Thix made a gesture that might have been a shrug. "We did not understand it then. We still do not fully understand it now. We only know it worked. The soft ones stayed with us for many years. They touched our leaders, our warriors, our children. Slowly, we healed. The rage storms became less frequent. We learned to control them better. We began to grow strong again." "What happened to them?" Yunji asked. "These soft ones?" The elder's expression grew sad. "They left. One day they gathered their leaders and our leaders together in a ceremony. They placed their hands on the heads of our greatest warriors in a final bonding, and they spoke a prophecy." He turned to face Jiho directly now. "They said, 'When the storms return and worlds collide, the soft ones will return to restore balance. You will know them by their touch. You will know them by the peace they bring. And when they return, you must follow them through the coming void, for only together will both peoples survive what lies ahead." Jiho felt a chill run down his spine, despite the warm air in the room. "And you think we are these soft ones?" "I know you are," Princess Erin spoke for the first time since they had left the hall. Her voice was stronger now, more controlled, but still carried an undertone of emotion. When you touched my head, I felt it. The rage storm that always lives in the back of my mind, the anger that I must constantly fight to control, it went silent, completely silent. For the first time in my entire life, I felt true peace. She stepped forward, and Jiho noticed her hands were trembling slightly. That is why we knelt. That is why we dropped our weapons. The ancient texts say that the touch of bonding is sacred above all things. When one of the soft ones places their hand on the head of a Carvix, it creates a connection that cannot be broken. It means they have chosen to lead us. It means they have accepted responsibility for our people. But I didn't mean... Jiho started to protest. It does not matter what you meant, Thix interrupted gently. It only matters what you did. You performed the bonding ritual with our princess, daughter of our ruler, commander of our 3rd Legion. By our oldest laws, by our most sacred traditions, you are now bound to her. And she is bound to you. Jiho looked at his team. Yunji's face had gone pale. Doyun looked like he was trying to calculate whether they could fight their way back to their ship. Taejin was already pulling out his datapad, probably wanting to document everything and analyze the implications. What does that mean exactly? Jiho asked carefully. This bonding? Princess Erin answered. It means you have claimed responsibility for my welfare and my honor. It means I have accepted you as worthy to lead me. It means that where you go, I go. Your battles are my battles. Your enemies are my enemies. Your fate is my fate. She paused, and then added more quietly, It is the highest bond in our culture. Higher than family. Higher than clan. It is usually only formed between the greatest warriors after years of fighting side by side. It has not been performed in the traditional way since the time of the soft ones. Until now, until you. Jiho sat down heavily on one of the benches, his mind reeling. He had come here to establish diplomatic relations, to open trade talks, to represent humanity's peaceful intentions. Instead, somehow, in a moment of pure instinct, he had triggered an ancient prophecy and bound himself to an alien princess in a ritual that meant he was now responsible for her entire civilization. This is impossible, he muttered. And yet, Thix said with what might have been the Carvix equivalent of a smile, it has happened. Jiho sat in the private quarters the Carvix had provided for him and his team, staring at the ceiling and wondering how his life had become so complicated in such a short time. The ceiling was smooth black stone, just like everything else in this building, and it reflected the dim blue lights that seemed to be the Carvix preference for indoor illumination. Yunji was pacing back and forth across the room, her footsteps making soft sounds on the stone floor. She had been pacing for 20 minutes now, occasionally stopping to gesture at nothing in particular. We need to contact Earth immediately, she said for the 5th time. The Council needs to know what happened. They need to send instructions. They need to send backup. They need to send someone who actually knows what they are doing with ancient alien prophecies. I do not think Earth has anyone who knows what to do with ancient alien prophecies, Taejin said from where he sat cross-legged on the floor, his datapad balanced on his knees. He had been reading through all the information the Carvix had provided about the soft ones. Translated text from tablets that were thousands of years old. This is completely unique. Nothing in the first contact protocols covers this situation. Doyun stood by the door, arms crossed, looking like he would rather be anywhere else in the galaxy. The real question is whether they will let us leave. We might be prisoners now, just very well-treated prisoners. We are not prisoners, Jiho said quietly. He had been quiet for a while, thinking, processing everything. They worship the soft ones. If they truly believe we are the soft ones returned, or at least descendants of them, then we are probably the safest humans in the entire galaxy right now. Safe except for the part where you are apparently bound to their princess and responsible for leading them through some mysterious coming darkness that the prophecy mentioned, Yunji pointed out. She stopped pacing and looked at him with concern in her eyes. Jiho, you are a diplomat, a good one. But you are not a warrior. You are not a military commander. You are not qualified to lead an alien species through whatever crisis this prophecy is talking about. Jiho nodded slowly. I know. Believe me, I know. But we do not get to choose what happened. I touched her head. The bonding occurred. Now we need to figure out what it actually means and what we are supposed to do about it. A soft chime sounded at the door. All four humans turned to look at it. Doyun's hand moved instinctively toward his sidearm, though Jiho doubted it would do much good against the Karvik's warriors if they decided to turn hostile. Come in, Jiho called out. The door slid open with a whisper of sound, and Princess Arin entered. She was not wearing her full armor now, just a simpler outfit made of dark fabric that still somehow looked military in style. Her purple scales seemed to shimmer in the blue light. She moved with the controlled grace of a trained fighter, each step deliberate and balanced. Behind her came Counselor Thix, moving much more slowly, leaning on a carved staff for support. Yunji immediately stood straighter, falling into formal diplomatic posture. Jiho stood as well, and his team followed his lead. Princess, Jiho said, inclining his head respectfully. Counselor, how can we help you? Arin's vertical pupil eyes focused on him with that same intensity he had noticed in the hall. It was unnerving, being looked at like that, like he was a puzzle she was trying to solve. We need to talk more about the bonding, she said. Her voice was controlled, but Jiho could hear an undercurrent of uncertainty in it. And about the prophecy. There are things you need to understand. Things that affect not just you and me, but both of our species. Thix gestured with his staff toward the cushioned seats arranged around a low table. May we sit? This conversation will take time. Once everyone was settled, the elderly counselor pulled out a small device from his robes. He pressed something on its surface, and a holographic image appeared above the table. It showed what looked like a star map, with various colored lights marking different locations. This is our sector of space, Thix explained. The green lights are Karvik's worlds, 17 planets under our control, each one home to billions of our people. The blue lights are other species we have encountered. Some are our allies, some are neutral, some are enemies we have fought wars against. He touched the device again, and a dark area appeared at the edge of the map, a region with no lights at all. And this is what we call the dead zone. Ships that enter this area never return. Probes we send go silent. It has been growing slowly for the past 100 years, consuming planets at the edge of our territory. Taejin leaned forward, his engineer's curiosity clearly activated. What causes it? A black hole? Some kind of spatial anomaly? We do not know, Arin answered. We have lost 3 scouting fleets trying to investigate, but my father and the council believe this is what the prophecy called the void, the coming darkness that the soft ones warned us about. She looked directly at Jiho again. And it is getting worse. 10 years ago, the dead zone was consuming planets every few years. Now it happens every few months. Our scientists estimate that within 50 years, it will reach our core worlds. Within 100 years, it will consume our entire empire. Yunji made a soft sound of dismay. That is terrible. But what do you expect us to do about it? Humanity barely has faster-than-light travel. We have 7 colonies, not 17 planets. Our technology is centuries behind yours in most areas. Perhaps, Thix said slowly. But the prophecy does not say the soft ones will stop the void with weapons or technology. It says they will lead us through it. Through, not around. Through, not by destroying it. The prophecy suggests that the answer is not in fighting the void, but in surviving it somehow, in passing through it to something beyond. He paused, looking at each of the humans in turn. The soft ones were not warriors, they were not conquerors, but they saved us from extinction by doing what they did best, understanding things differently than we did, seeing solutions we could not see. That is what we need now. Not more weapons, not more warriors. We have plenty of those. We need a different way of thinking. Jiho rubbed his face with both hands, feeling the weight of this responsibility settling on his shoulders. You are asking us to solve a problem that your entire civilization, with all its advanced science and military power, has not been able to solve, based on nothing but an ancient prophecy and the fact that I accidentally performed a ritual I did not even know existed. Yes, Arin said simply. There was no apology in her voice, no uncertainty, just statement of fact. That is exactly what we are asking. The bonding is not just symbolic, Thix added. There are physical effects. Princess Erin felt them immediately when you touched her head. The rage storm that all Karviks carry in our blood, the violent impulses we must constantly control. It went quiet in her mind. This is not imagination. This is real. He pulled out another device and displayed what looked like brain scan images. We performed neural scans of the princess after the bonding. Her brain chemistry has changed. The areas that control aggression and territorial instincts have calmed significantly. She is still herself, still a warrior, but the constant battle against her own violent nature has eased. Doyen spoke up for the first time in a while. So what you are saying is that humans have some kind of biological effect on your species? Our presence actually changes your brain chemistry? It appears so, Thix confirmed. We do not understand the mechanism. The ancient texts suggest it has something to do with the electromagnetic fields your brains generate, something about the frequencies at which human neurons fire. But we lost the detailed scientific knowledge when the soft ones left. We only kept the historical records and the prophecy. Taejin was typing furiously on his datapad now, clearly excited despite the seriousness of the situation. This is incredible. If there is really a neurological interaction between human and Karvik's biology, it could explain so much. It could be why the bonding ritual works. It could be why your people remember the soft ones so clearly after thousands of years. It could even be related to whatever the void is. Could be, Yunji said skeptically. Or it could be completely unrelated, and we are all putting far too much faith in a prophecy that might just be a nice story your ancestors told themselves to feel better about being abandoned by aliens who helped them once and then left. Arin's scales seemed to darken slightly, a sign of anger if Jiho was reading her body language correctly. You dare to— Peace, Jiho said, holding up one hand. To his surprise, Arin immediately went quiet, though she still looked offended. Apparently, the bonding gave him some kind of authority over her behavior. That was disturbing in its own way. He looked at Thix and Erin seriously. I understand this is important to your people. I understand you believe the prophecy is real, and that we are connected to the soft ones somehow. But Yunji has a point. We cannot make decisions based purely on faith. We need evidence. We need to understand what is actually happening. Then help us gather that evidence, Arin said, and her voice was almost pleading now. It was strange hearing such vulnerability from someone who had seemed so fierce earlier. Work with our scientists. Study the bonding effect. Investigate the void with us. You do not have to commit to leading us through some cosmic darkness right now. Just stay, learn, help us understand. Jiho looked at his team. Yunji still looked worried. Doyun looked uncomfortable, but Taejin was nodding slowly, clearly interested in the scientific mystery. We need to contact Earth first, Jiho said carefully. We need to report what has happened and get guidance from our leadership. This is bigger than just a diplomatic mission now. This involves our entire species, potentially. Agreed, Thix said. We will provide you with secure communication equipment. Contact your people. Tell them what has occurred. But I would ask one thing. What? Jiho asked. Tell them the truth, the counselor said. Tell them that the Karvix, one of the most powerful military forces in this sector of space, are asking humanity for help. Tell them we are not threatening you or demanding anything. We are asking humbly, because we believe you are our only hope of survival. The old Karvix stood slowly, leaning on his staff. The bonding has occurred. It cannot be undone. Whether you believe in the prophecy or not, whether you think you are descended from the soft ones or not, the connection between you and our princess is real. Her fate is tied to yours now, and through her, the fate of our entire species may rest on the choices you make in the coming days. He moved toward the door, then paused and looked back. We do not expect you to save us, young human. We only ask that you try to understand us. Sometimes that is all we can ask of another. After Thix and Arin left, the four humans sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Yunji spoke. This is insane. You know that, right? This is completely insane. Jiho laughed, a short, tired sound. Yes, it is completely insane. So what do we do? Doyen asked. Jiho thought about the look in Arin's eyes when she had asked them to stay. He thought about the fear hidden under Thix's calm words. He thought about an entire civilization facing extinction and putting their hope in a prophecy about soft aliens who touched heads and brought peace. We call Earth, he said finally. We explain everything. And then we hope they are as willing to take insane risks as we are. The holographic communication screen flickered to life in the private chamber the Karvix had provided for secure Earth communications. Admiral Hana Choi's face appeared, and she did not look happy. Behind her, Jiho could see several other figures in the command center back on Earth, all looking equally concerned. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Admiral Hana said, her voice tight with carefully controlled frustration. You went to Velthara to establish basic diplomatic contact. Instead, you accidentally performed some kind of sacred alien bonding ritual with their princess. Now an entire warrior civilization thinks you are the prophesied return of ancient aliens who saved them thousands of years ago. And they want you to lead them through an expanding region of space that destroys everything it touches. Do I have that right? Jiho nodded wearily. He had been explaining the situation for 30 minutes now, and it did not sound any less ridiculous each time he said it out loud. Yes, Admiral, that is an accurate summary. And you performed this bonding ritual by doing what, exactly? Another voice asked from off-screen. Jiho recognized it as Counselor Park, one of the senior members of the United Earth Council. I touched the princess's head, Jiho said. It is a gesture humans use to comfort or calm someone. I did not know it had any special meaning to the Karvix. I was trying to de-escalate a situation that was about to turn violent. Admiral Hana closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, she looked directly at Jiho through the holographic display. I want you and your team back on Earth immediately. You will provide a full report to the Council. We will send a different diplomatic team to handle this situation. People with more experience in... They will not let us leave, Yunji interrupted, stepping into view of the camera. Or rather, they will let us leave, but they will not accept any other diplomats. The bonding is specific to Jiho. They believe he is the one chosen by the prophecy. Anyone else we send will be considered irrelevant. That is ridiculous, someone said from the background of the Earth Command Center. Perhaps, Tejan added, also moving into the camera frame. But it is their culture, their belief system. We cannot just dismiss it because it seems strange to us, and there is actual scientific evidence to support some of their claims. I have sent you the neural scan data showing the changes in Princess Erin's brain chemistry after the bonding. Something real happened, not just something symbolic. Admiral Hana looked off-screen, probably reviewing the data Taijin had mentioned. Her expression shifted from frustration to concern. This is beyond my authority to decide. The Council is meeting right now to discuss the situation. In the meantime, you are ordered to remain on Velthara, but to take no further actions that might deepen this bonding situation. Is that clear? Clear, Admiral, Jiho confirmed. The communication ended, and the holographic screen went dark. Jiho sat down heavily, feeling exhausted despite it being early in the day by local time standards. That went well, Doyun said dryly. It could have been worse, Yunji pointed out. They could have ordered us arrested for exceeding our diplomatic authority. They still might, Jiho muttered. Once the Council finishes arguing about it. Over the next 3 days, the situation became increasingly complicated. News of the bonding spread throughout the Karvix Empire with incredible speed. Jiho watched through the room's view screens as crowds began gathering outside the building where he was staying. Not angry crowds, not threatening crowds. They were celebrating. Karvix citizens were holding ceremonies in the streets, burning incense that smelled like burning copper, chanting words in their language that Thix translated as prayers of thanksgiving. Some of them carried signs with symbols that apparently meant the Soft One's return, and the prophecy is fulfilled. Princess Erin visited their quarters multiple times, each visit seeming more awkward than the last. She clearly wanted to talk to Jiho about the bonding, about what it meant, about what came next. But she also seemed uncertain about how to approach the topic. Jiho suspected that for all her warrior training and military command experience, dealing with ancient religious prophecies was outside her normal duties. On the 4th day, things took a turn for the worse. Jiho was reviewing star charts with Taijin, trying to understand more about the dead zone, when Yunji burst into the room with her datapad in hand and her face pale. "We have a problem," she announced. "A big problem. The Galactic Council has issued a formal statement about our situation here." The Galactic Council was the loose association of advanced alien species that governed interstellar politics in this region of space. Humanity had only been accepted as an observer member 2 years ago, with limited voting rights and no real power. The Council was dominated by species that had been spacefaring for thousands of years, and they did not always look kindly on newcomers. Yunji activated her datapad and read from the statement. The Galactic Council expresses deep concern regarding reports that the human species has entered into a formal power-sharing arrangement with the Karvix Empire without proper authorization or oversight. The Council reminds all member species that the Karvix are a militaristic civilization with a history of aggressive expansion. Any alliance between humans and Karvix that shifts the balance of power in this sector will be viewed as a potential threat to galactic peace and stability. "That is not what happened," Jiho protested. "We did not form an alliance. We performed an accidental cultural ritual." "They do not see it that way," Yunji said. "Several Council species are already calling for sanctions against Earth. Some are suggesting that humanity should be expelled from the Council entirely for attempting to manipulate Karvix religious beliefs for political advantage." Doyun swore under his breath. "This is politics. They are worried that if the Karvix form a close relationship with humanity, it changes the power dynamics. We are new, we are unpredictable, and now we have the attention of one of the strongest military forces in the region." Another communication came through, this time from Earth again. But it was not Admiral Hana this time. It was the full United Earth Council, all 12 members visible in a conference room arrangement on the holographic display. The chairman, an older man named Director Quan, spoke first. "Jiho Kim, the Council has reached a decision regarding your situation. After extensive debate and consultation with our xenocultural experts, we have concluded that you must return to Earth immediately. The Karviks can believe whatever they want about prophecies and bondings, but we cannot allow one diplomatic incident to dictate Earth's foreign policy for years to come. Jiho felt something sink in his chest. He had known this was coming, but hearing it officially still felt wrong somehow. Director, with respect, if I leave now, the Karviks will see it as betrayal. They have put their faith in this prophecy, in the idea that we are here to help them. If we just abandon them, they are using you, another council member interrupted, a woman named Representative Santos. Using your ignorance of their customs to trap you in a commitment that serves their interests, not ours. This is manipulation, pure and simple. We must protect Earth's interests first. But what if the prophecy is real? Taejin spoke up, his voice urgent. What if there really is something about human neurological patterns that affects Karvik's biology? What if we actually could help them with the dead zone problem? Do we just walk away from that possibility? We walk away from becoming entangled in an alien religious movement that could drag humanity into conflicts we are not prepared for, Director Kwan said firmly. The decision is final. You have 48 hours to extract yourselves from this situation diplomatically and return to Earth. If you refuse, you will be considered in violation of your diplomatic charter and subject to arrest upon your return. The communication ended abruptly. The four humans sat in stunned silence. Then Yunji spoke, her voice quiet but intense. We have to follow orders. We cannot just ignore the council. They are right that this is bigger than us, bigger than one diplomatic mission. But they are wrong about the Karviks, Jiho said. I have talked with Arin, with Thix, with their scientists. They are not manipulating us. They genuinely believe in this prophecy, and more importantly, they are genuinely terrified of the dead zone. They are facing extinction, and they see us as their only hope. That is not our responsibility, Yunji argued, though she sounded less certain than her words suggested. We cannot save every species in the galaxy. We have to think about humanity first. Before Jiho could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the building. Red lights flashed in the corridors outside their room. Doyan was on his feet immediately, hand on his sidearm. The door slid open and Princess Arin rushed in, wearing full combat armor and carrying weapons. Her face was grim. What is happening? Jiho demanded. The dead zone, Arin said, her voice tight. It just accelerated. One of our border colonies, a planet called Thelvax with 3 billion people living on it, is being consumed right now. We are getting emergency transmissions, ships trying to evacuate, cities going dark, and something else. She pulled up a holographic display from her wrist device. It showed sensor readings Jiho did not fully understand, but Taejin sucked in a sharp breath. Those are ships, the engineer said, coming out of the dead zone, but they are not Karvik's ships. No, Arin confirmed. They are not. We have never seen this ship design before. They appeared at the edge of the dead zone just as Thelvax began to be consumed. Our defense fleet engaged them, but... She paused, and for the first time since Jiho had met her, she looked genuinely afraid. They destroyed 6 of our warships in less than 5 minutes. Whatever these things are, they are far more advanced than anything we have ever encountered. Another alarm sounded, different from the first. Arin checked her device again, and her scales seemed to pale slightly. My father is calling an emergency war council. All military commanders are being summoned. The Empire is going to full alert status. She looked at Jiho directly. He wants you there too, at the war council. He is invoking the bonding. As my bond partner, you have the right to advise me in matters of war. And my father believes we need every possible perspective right now, including yours. Yunji stepped forward. We have been ordered to return to Earth. We cannot get involved in a Karvik's military situation. People are dying, Arin said simply. 3 billion people on Thelvax. My brothers and sisters in the defense fleet. And if these ships from the dead zone continue their attack, more will die. Many more. She looked at Jiho with those intense violet eyes. I am not asking as a princess. I am asking as someone who is bonded to you. Please, help us. Jiho thought about Director Kwan's orders. He thought about the threat of arrest if he disobeyed. He thought about Earth's concerns about being dragged into alien conflicts. All of that was reasonable and logical and made perfect political sense. Then he thought about 3 billion people dying on a planet he had never visited. He thought about Arin's fear, barely hidden under her warrior composure. He thought about Thix's words. Sometimes all we can ask of another is that they try to understand us. He made his decision. Take me to the War Council, he said. Yunji grabbed his arm. Jiho, if you do this, you are committing treason against Earth. Your career is over. You could go to prison. Jiho met her eyes steadily. Then come with me and we can commit treason together, or go back to the ship and tell the council I acted alone. I will not blame you for choosing to follow orders. For a long moment, Yunji stared at him. Then she released his arm and nodded slowly. You are the most frustrating diplomat I have ever worked with. She looked at Doyun and Taejin. Well, are we following this idiot into whatever disaster he is walking into? Doyun shrugged. I did not join diplomatic service to play it safe. Taejin was already pulling on his jacket. If there are mysterious ships coming out of a dead zone in space, I want to see the sensor data. This is too interesting to miss. Arin's expression shifted to something that might have been respect, or gratitude, or both. Follow me. We need to move quickly. The council is already gathering. As they rushed through the corridors toward whatever came next, Jiho wondered if he had just made the best decision of his life or the worst. He supposed he would find out soon enough. The War Council chamber was massive and circular, with a raised platform in the center where holographic displays showed tactical information. Around the edges of the room stood Karvik's military commanders, each one wearing armor decorated with symbols indicating their rank and accomplishments. The air was thick with tension and the smell of metal and alien biology. Karvax himself stood at the center platform, his scarred scales seeming even darker in the red emergency lighting. His presence dominated the room in a way that went beyond physical size. This was a being who had led his people through countless conflicts and won. When he spoke, everyone listened. The situation is critical, the ruler announced as Jiho and his team entered with Princess Arin. Several of the commanders turned to stare at the humans, but Karvax gestured for them to be silent. The humans are here at my invitation. They are bonded to my daughter. They will observe and may offer counsel if they have useful insights. One of the commanders, a particularly large Karvix with bright red scales, made a hissing sound that the translator interpreted as contemptuous laughter. What can soft creatures who have barely left their home world possibly teach us about war? Watch your words, Commander Rathek, Arin said coldly. The bonding is sacred, even if you do not understand it. Before the argument could escalate, the holographic display activated, showing a three-dimensional map of the region. A small planet labeled as Thelvax appeared in orange, with multiple red indicators surrounding it. A Karvix, wearing what looked like a science officer's uniform, began the briefing. Thelvax colony was home to 3.2 billion citizens. Evacuation is underway, but we estimate only 40% of the population can escape before the dead zone effect reaches the planet's surface. Transport ships are departing as quickly as they can be loaded, but time is running out. The display zoomed in, showing the planet in detail. Jiho could see cities going dark one by one, like lights being turned off. It was horrifying to watch, knowing each of those dark areas represented millions of people either escaping or dying. What about the unidentified ships? Karvax demanded. Show me what we are facing. The display shifted to show spacecraft unlike anything Jiho had ever seen. They were organic-looking, with surfaces that seemed to pulse and shift like living tissue. Long tentacle-like appendages extended from their central bodies, and as Jiho watched the sensor recordings, those appendages reached out and attached themselves to Karvik's warships, pulling them apart like insects being torn by a predator. We are calling them Vorash ships, after an old word in our language that means plague bringer, the science officer explained. Analysis suggests they are at least partially biological. They do not respond to communication attempts. Their only behavior so far has been to attack our vessels and approach Thelvax. We have lost 9 warships in engagement, with minimal damage done to the enemy. Their armor appears to regenerate almost instantly. Taejin leaned closer to Jiho and whispered, "Those ships are using technology we do not even have theories for. Biological hull material that self-repairs, energy signatures I cannot identify, movement patterns that violate our understanding of physics. This is far beyond even the Karvik's level of technology." "What are their numbers?" Commander Rathek asked, his aggressive tone from earlier replaced by professional concern. Initial count showed 15 vessels emerging from the dead zone. However, the science officer paused, clearly not wanting to deliver bad news. That number is now up to 32 and still increasing. It appears they are coming through in waves. Murmurs of alarm rippled through the assembled commanders. Even Karvax's expression darkened. "How long until they reach Thelvax's surface?" he asked. "Approximately 4 hours at their current speed." "And our reinforcement fleets?" "The nearest major fleet is 6 hours away. The second fleet is 9 hours out. We cannot reach Thelvax in time with enough force to make a difference." Jiho watched the holographic display, his mind racing. The Vorash ships were slowly surrounding the planet, almost like they were herding the evacuation ships. Several transport vessels full of fleeing civilians were being destroyed by those terrible tentacle weapons. He felt sick watching it happen, unable to do anything. "There is something else," the science officer continued, pulling up another data stream. "We have been monitoring the neural patterns of our warriors in combat with the Vorash. They are experiencing severe rage storms. The effect is stronger than any natural occurrence we have recorded. It is as if these ships are deliberately triggering the worst aspects of our biology." The room went quiet at that statement. Princess Erin spoke first, her voice controlled, but Jiho could hear the fear underneath. "Are you saying these creatures know about our rage storms? They are weaponizing our own biology against us?" "That is the current theory, yes, Princess." Counselor Thix, who had been standing silently near the edge of the room, stepped forward. His old voice carried clearly despite the chaos. "The prophecy speaks of this. The plague that the Soft Ones saved us from thousands of years ago. The ancient texts describe creatures that consumed worlds and drove our people mad with rage. We called them by a name that translates roughly to the Devourers. What if these Vorash are the same species? What if they have returned?" Commander Rathek made another derisive sound. "You would have us believe in ancient stories at a time like this? We need military solutions, not mythology." "Sometimes mythology is just history that has been forgotten," Jiho said quietly. He had not meant to speak aloud, but his words carried in the sudden silence that followed. Every Karvix in the room turned to look at him. Karvax's vertical pupil eyes focused on him with intense scrutiny. "The human speaks. Tell us, Soft One, what do you see that we are missing?" Jiho felt his mouth go dry. He was not a military strategist. He was not qualified to advise alien warriors on how to fight unknown enemies. But everyone was staring at him, waiting. The bonding had given him a voice in this council, whether he wanted it or not. He stepped closer to the holographic display, studying the patterns of Vorash ship movements. Yunji moved to stand beside him, a silent show of support. Doyun and Taejin flanked them. "If the counselor is correct, Jiho began carefully. "And these Vorash are the same species from your ancient plague. Then they survived thousands of years somehow. They waited in that dead zone, or they were trapped there, or they used it as a hiding place. Now they have returned, and they remember the Karvix. They know about the rage storms because they fought your species before." He pointed to the sensor data showing affected Karvix warriors. The science officer said the rage storms are being triggered deliberately. That means the Vorash are using some kind of technology or biological weapon that specifically targets Karvix neurology. But if the soft ones could calm the rage storms with their touch, then there must be something about our biology that counteracts whatever the Vorash are doing. "The neural scans," Taejin jumped in, excited now that he understood where Jiho was going. When Jiho touched Princess Arin, her brain patterns changed. The areas of her brain associated with aggression and rage were suppressed. If we could replicate that effect, if we could project those calming frequencies somehow, it might protect your warriors from the Vorash influence. The science officer looked skeptical. "You are suggesting we use human brain patterns as a shield against an enemy weapon. That is completely theoretical. We have no technology to project neural frequencies across space." "Then we build it," Taejin said simply. "You have advanced technology. We have the biological template. Work together. You said we have 4 hours before the Vorash reach Thelvax's surface. That gives us 4 hours to try something, anything, rather than just watching billions of people die." Commander Rathek stepped forward, his scales bristling with agitation. "Even if we could build such a device in time, which I doubt, how would we deploy it? Our ships cannot get close enough to the Vorash without being torn apart. And we only have 4 humans. Their neural patterns could not possibly cover an entire battlefield." "But it might cover one ship," Princess Arin said suddenly. Her eyes were bright with the beginnings of a plan. "A small strike craft, fast and maneuverable. If we could protect the pilot from the rage storm effect, if we could get close enough to the Vorash ships to scan them properly, to find weaknesses, to learn how they fight without our warriors losing their minds to rage." "You are suggesting a suicide mission," Karvax said flatly. But there was something in his expression that suggested he was considering it. "I am suggesting a scouting mission," Arin corrected. "1 ship, 1 pilot, protected by the human neural effect. Get close, learn what we can, get out. That information could save the reinforcement fleets when they arrive. It could mean the difference between losing Thelvax and everyone on it, or mounting an effective defense." "And who would pilot this theoretical suicide scout?" Commander Rathek asked sarcastically. Arin met his gaze steadily. "I would." The room erupted in protest. Multiple commanders spoke at once, arguing that the princess was too valuable, that it was too dangerous, that it was a waste of a military asset. But Karvax raised one clawed hand, and silence fell immediately. "You are my daughter," he said, his voice rough with emotion he was trying to hide. "You are third in line to lead our empire. I cannot risk you on something so uncertain." "You can, and you must," Arin replied. "I am bonded to the human. The effect is strongest between us. If this plan has any chance of working, it requires me and him together." She turned to look at Jiho. "Will you come with me? I know you are not a warrior. I know this is not what you trained for. But the bonding flows both ways. If my presence helps you understand us, perhaps your presence can help me resist the Vorash's rage storm weapon long enough to get close and learn what we need to know." Jiho looked at the holographic display again, at the planet Thelvax slowly being consumed, at the evacuation ships desperately trying to save whoever they could, at the nightmare ships called Vorash tearing through Karvik's defenses like they were nothing. He thought about Earth's orders to stay out of alien conflicts. He thought about how he was just a diplomat who had accidentally touched an alien princess's head and triggered a prophecy he still did not fully understand. Then he thought about 3 billion people who needed someone to try something, anything, no matter how desperate. "How long to build this neural frequency device?" he asked Tae-jin. His friend's eyes widened. "You are serious?" Ji-ho. "I cannot guarantee it will even work. This is completely experimental. You could die. You could both die." "How long?" Ji-ho repeated. Tae-jin looked at the Karvik science officer, then back at Ji-ho. "With their fabrication technology and my understanding of human neural patterns, maybe 3 hours, maybe less if we skip testing and safety protocols." "Do it," Karvax commanded. "Build your device. Outfit a scout ship. Prepare for launch." He looked at his daughter with an expression that held both pride and pain. "If you insist on this foolishness, then do it properly. Take our fastest ship, take our best equipment, and come back alive. That is an order." "Yes, father," Arin said, bowing her head in respect. As the War Council dispersed into organized chaos, everyone rushing to make preparations, Yoonji grabbed Ji-ho's arm. Her grip was tight enough to hurt. "You do not have to do this," she said intensely. "This is not your war. These are not your people. You can still walk away." Ji-ho gently removed her hand from his arm. "No," he said quietly. "I really cannot. The moment I touched Arin's head, the moment the bonding happened, I became responsible. Not because of some prophecy or some ancient ritual, but because I am human, and we do not walk away from people who need help just because it is dangerous or complicated or might get us in trouble." He smiled at her worried expression. "Besides, someone needs to make sure the princess does not do anything too reckless while flying into a swarm of alien death ships." "Too late," Doyen muttered. "Pretty sure that qualifies as reckless all by itself." 3 hours and 17 minutes later, Ji-ho stood in the launch bay, staring at the scout ship that might become his coffin. It was sleek and angular, built for speed rather than combat, with black armor plating that seemed to absorb light. Karvik's technicians swarmed around it, making final adjustments and loading equipment. Tae-jin ran up to him, carrying a device that looked like a metal headband with small lights embedded in it. His friend's face was flushed with exertion, and his hands were shaking slightly from too much stimulant drink and not enough sleep. "This is it," Tae-jin said, holding up the device. "Neural frequency transmitter. It reads your brainwave patterns and amplifies them, broadcasting them in a radius of about 50 meters. In theory, any Karviks within that range should experience the same calming effect that Princess Arin felt when you touched her head." "In theory," Ji-ho repeated. "In theory," Tae-jin confirmed. "We did not have time for proper testing. We do not know if the effect scales properly. We do not know if it will work through ship hulls or if you need direct line of sight. We do not know if the Vorash can detect or counter it. Basically, we know nothing except that the device successfully broadcasts human neural patterns, and those patterns do something to Karvik's biology. So it is better than nothing," Ji-ho said, taking the device and fitting it onto his head. It was surprisingly light. "Barely," Tae-jin muttered. "If this was a proper engineering project, we would need 6 months of testing minimum. Instead, we get 3 hours and you get to be the test subject while flying through a war zone." Yoonji approached from the other side of the bay, carrying what looked like a survival pack. "Emergency supplies," she explained, handing it to him. "Medical kit, rations, oxygen capsules, translator booster, and a beacon in case you need to be rescued." Doyen made sure the medical kit includes human-compatible pain medication, in case things go very wrong. "Comforting," Ji-ho said, but he took the pack gratefully. "There is still time to back out," Yoonji said quietly. "I know you feel responsible because of the bonding, but nobody would blame you for choosing not to commit suicide." Ji-ho started to respond, but movement caught his eye. Princess Arin was walking across the launch bay toward them, now wearing a pilot's flight suit instead of her armor. The suit was form-fitting and dark blue, with what looked like bio-monitoring sensors built into the material. Her scales seemed to shimmer under the bright lights of the bay. She stopped in front of Jiho and studied him for a moment with those intense violet eyes. "You are afraid," she observed. It was not a question or a criticism, just a statement of fact. "Yes," Jiho admitted. There was no point in lying. "I have never been in combat before. I have never even been in a real starship battle simulation. I am a diplomat, not a soldier. Of course I am afraid." Something shifted in Arin's expression. For the first time since they had met, she smiled. It was a small smile, showing just the tips of sharp teeth, but it was genuine. "Good," she said. "Fear means you understand the danger. Fear keeps you alert. I have flown with warriors who thought they were invincible, and most of them died doing something stupid because they did not have enough fear to make them careful." She placed a hand over her chest in what Jiho recognized as a Karvik's gesture of respect. "I am honored to fly with someone brave enough to be afraid and still choose to come." "The ship is ready, Princess," one of the technicians called out. Arin nodded and gestured for Jiho to follow her up the ramp into the scout ship. The interior was cramped, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. There were 2 seats in the cockpit, side by side, surrounded by controls and displays that showed tactical information in Karvik symbols that Jiho could not read. "Sit there," Arin indicated the right-hand seat. "The controls are locked to my neural signature, so you cannot accidentally do anything to interfere with the flying. Your job is simple. Stay calm, keep that device active, and tell me if you notice anything unusual about the Vorash ships that I might miss because I am focused on piloting." Jiho strapped himself into the seat, adjusting the safety harness. The chair was designed for Karvik's physiology and was slightly too large for him, but it would work. He activated the neural transmitter device on his head, feeling a faint tingling sensation as it powered up. "Testing the neural field now," Taejin's voice came through the ship's communication system. "Princess, do you feel anything different?" Arin paused in her pre-flight checks, her clawed hands hovering over the controls. She tilted her head slightly, listening to something only she could hear inside her own mind. "Yes," she said after a moment. "The rage storm is there, always there, like static at the edge of my thoughts. But it is quieter now. Muffled, like someone has placed a blanket over it." She looked at Jiho with something like wonder. "If this effect holds during combat, it will be the first time in my life I have fought without having to battle my own instincts at the same time." The ramp sealed shut with a hiss of pressurization. The cockpit displays all turned green, showing ready status. Arin's hands moved over the controls with practiced confidence, bringing the ship's systems online. "Launch control. This is Scout 7 requesting clearance for departure," she said into the communication system. "Scout 7, you are cleared for launch," came the reply. "Your father says to fly smart and come home safe. The human admiral from Earth is also transmitting. She wants to speak to Diplomat Kim." A new voice came through the speakers, and Jiho recognized Admiral Hana immediately. "Jiho, I do not know if you can hear this, but the Council has been informed of what you are attempting. They are not happy. However, I convinced them to hold off on any official censure until we see if you survive. Try to make me look good by not dying. Understood?" Despite the tension, Jiho found himself smiling. "Understood, Admiral. I will do my best." "Oh, and Jiho? What you are doing is either the bravest thing or the stupidest thing I have seen in 30 years of service. Possibly both. Earth is watching. Make us proud." The communication cut off. Arin glanced at him sideways. "Your Admiral has an interesting way of showing support." "She is practical," Jiho said. "And she is right. This is probably both brave and stupid at the same time." "Then we are well matched," Arin said. "My father has called me brave and stupid more times than I can count." The scout ship lifted off the bay floor with a barely perceptible hum of anti-gravity engines. They rotated smoothly and accelerated toward the launch tunnel. Within seconds, they were shooting through the tunnel and bursting out into open space. The view was immediately breathtaking and terrifying. They were in orbit around Velthara, the Karvik's homeworld, but the planet was not what caught Jiho's attention. In the distance, he could see Thelvax, the colony world that was being attacked. Even from this far away, he could see the darkness spreading across its surface like an infection, the dead zone effect consuming it bit by bit. And surrounding the planet were the Vorash ships, dozens of them now, their organic hulls pulsing with sickly light. Karvik's warships were engaging them, firing energy weapons that seemed to barely scratch the enemy vessels. As Jiho watched, one of those terrible tentacle appendages reached out and grabbed a Karvik's destroyer, crushing it like a tin can. "Hold on," Arin said. "We are going to accelerate hard." The scout ship leaped forward with sudden violent speed that pressed Jiho back into his seat. The inertial dampeners handled most of the G-forces, but he still felt the pressure in his chest. Stars streaked past the viewport as they raced toward the battle zone. "Time to Thelvax orbit 14 minutes, Arin announced, her eyes scanning the tactical displays. "I am linking us into the fleet network so we can see what the warships are seeing. Watch for patterns in how the Vorash move and attack. Any information could be useful." Jiho forced himself to focus on the displays, rather than the terrifying view outside. The neural transmitter hummed gently against his forehead. He could see data streaming across the screens, showing positions of friendly and enemy ships, energy readings, damage reports. "The Vorash are not just attacking randomly," he observed after a few minutes of study. "Look at how they position themselves. They are herding the evacuation transports away from the most efficient escape vectors. They want the civilians to take longer routes, which means more time for the dead zone to advance." Arin adjusted their course slightly, her hands moving over the controls with fluid precision. "You are right. They are not just trying to destroy. They are trying to maximize casualties. This is not warfare. This is systematic extermination." A proximity alarm blared. 3 Vorash ships had broken away from the main group and were moving to intercept them. "They have detected us," Arin said, her voice calm despite the danger. "Preparing evasive maneuvers. Keep that neural device active. We are about to see if it actually works." The Vorash ships accelerated toward them with impossible speed. They moved more like living creatures than spacecraft, their tentacles writhing in space as if swimming through water. Energy built up along their hulls, preparing to fire. Arin threw the scout ship into a hard spiral, dodging the first blast by mere meters. The second blast clipped their shields, causing alarms to sound. The third blast missed entirely as Arin performed a maneuver that Jiho was pretty sure violated several laws of physics. "How are you feeling?" Jiho shouted over the alarm sounds. "Clear," Arin shouted back. "No rage storm. I can think. I can plan. This is incredible." She pulled the ship into a dive under one of the Vorash vessels, so close that Jiho could see details on its organic hull. He activated his recording device, capturing as much data as he could. Up close, the Vorash ships were even more disturbing. The surface seemed to be made of something between metal and flesh, with veins of pulsing energy running through it. "They have weak points," Jiho said suddenly, pointing at the screen. "There, where the tentacles connect to the main body. The armor is thinner, and those energy veins, if you could disrupt them—" "I see it," Arin confirmed. She was already transmitting the information to the fleet command. "All ships, this is Scout 7. Target the tentacle connection points and the energy distribution veins. Concentrated fire at those locations may penetrate their armor." The fleet began adjusting their tactics immediately. Warships that had been firing uselessly at the thick hull armor started focusing on the weak points Jiho had identified. The effect was immediate and dramatic. One of the Vorash ships lost a tentacle, severed by concentrated plasma fire. It began to list, clearly damaged. "It is working," one of the fleet commanders transmitted. "Continue targeting those points." But the Vorash adapted quickly. The remaining ships began clustering together, protecting their vulnerable points. And they started releasing something new, smaller craft that poured out of openings in their hulls like insects from a hive. Hundreds of them, each one the size of a fighter craft, swarming toward the Karvik's fleet. "New contacts," Arin reported. "Vorash fighter analogs, thousands of them. They are overwhelming the fleet's defenses." Jiho watched in horror as the small Vorash craft attached themselves to Karvik's warships and began eating through the hulls, literally eating them, their organic bodies secreting some kind of acid that dissolved the metal armor. "We need to get closer to the main Vorash ships," Jiho said, a desperate plan forming in his mind. "The neural transmitter has a 50-meter range. If we can get close enough to one of their command vessels, if there are Karvik's warriors nearby being affected by rage storms, maybe we can clear their minds long enough to mount a better defense." "That is suicide," Arin said. "You said this was a scouting mission," Jiho countered. "We are gathering information. And the most important information we need is whether this neural transmitter can actually help your warriors in combat. There is only one way to find out." Arin was silent for 3 seconds. Then she laughed, a sharp barking sound. "You are insane, and you are right. Hold on. This is going to be very dangerous." She pushed the scout ship's engines to maximum, racing toward the heart of the Vorash fleet formation. Alarms screamed as enemy fire filled the space around them. The shields took hit after hit, their strength dropping rapidly. Arin's flying was beyond anything Jiho could have imagined, weaving through the chaos with impossible precision. They passed within 50 meters of a Karvik's battlecruiser that was being swarmed by the small Vorash craft. Jiho could see through the viewports that the Karvik's crew was fighting desperately but inefficiently, their movements jerky and wild, clearly affected by rage storms. Then they entered the neural transmitter's range. The effect was visible even from outside the ship. The Karvik's warriors suddenly moved with purpose instead of rage. Their weapons' fire became accurate instead of wild. They began coordinating, working together instead of fighting as maddened individuals. Within minutes, they had cleared the Vorash fighters from their hull and restored shield integrity. "This is Captain Vex of the battlecruiser Honor's Edge," a voice came through the communication system. "I do not know what just happened, but my crew's minds are suddenly clear. What sorcery is this?" "It is not sorcery," Arin transmitted back. "It is the human. His presence calms the rage storms. We need to spread this effect across the entire fleet. All ships form up around Scout 7. We will make attack runs through the Vorash formation. Stay within 50 meters of our position, and your warriors will be able to fight effectively." "Acknowledged," came multiple responses from fleet captains who had heard the transmission. And so began the strangest battle Jiho had ever witnessed. He and Arin became the center of a moving formation, a bubble of clarity in the chaos of warfare. Karvik's warships stayed close to them, using their cleared minds to fight with precision and coordination that the Vorash clearly had not expected. Slowly, impossibly, they began pushing the enemy back. But it was not enough. There were too many Vorash ships, and more kept emerging from the dead zone. The evacuation of Thelvax was only halfway complete. Time was running out. Then Jiho heard a new voice on the communication system, one he had not expected. "This is Admiral Hannah Choi of the Earth Defense Force. Earth sends its regards to the Karvik's people, and we do not abandon allies in their time of need. All ships, attack Formation Delta. Target those ugly bioships and show them why humanity did not stay on one planet." Through the viewport, Jiho saw dozens of human warships emerge from faster-than-light travel, followed by ships from other Galactic Council species. Earth had come, and they had brought friends. The arrival of the Earth fleet changed everything. Jiho watched through the viewport as human warships, smaller and less armored than the Karvik's vessels but faster and more maneuverable, streaked into the battle zone. They were followed by ships from other Galactic Council species, who had apparently decided that whatever political concerns they had about humanity and the Karviks were less important than stopping an extinction-level threat. Admiral Hana's voice came through the communication system again. "Karvik's Fleet Command, this is Admiral Choi. We have analyzed the tactical data you have been transmitting. Human ships will focus on the smaller Vorash craft. Our point defense systems are designed for swarm threats. Your heavy warships concentrate on the big targets. Coordinate through Diplomat Kim's position, since he seems to be the only thing keeping your warriors sane." Jiho could hear the frustration mixed with pride in the Admiral's voice. She was essentially acknowledging that one of her diplomats was now the tactical center of an interstellar battle, and she was both annoyed and impressed by it. "Acknowledged, Admiral," came the response from Karvax himself. "Your assistance is appreciated and will be remembered. All Karvik's ships, form defensive sphere around Scout 7 and the evacuation corridor. Human vessels, we leave the fighter suppression to you." What followed was the most coordinated battle Jiho had ever seen recorded, let alone participated in. The human ships, designed by a species that had evolved fighting itself in countless wars, proved devastatingly effective against the Vorash swarm craft. Their weapons systems, built to handle fast-moving threats in three-dimensional space, cut through the organic fighters like a harvest through wheat. Meanwhile, the Karvik's heavy warships, their crews protected from rage storms by staying close to Jiho's neural transmitter field, focused their massive weapons on the larger Vorash vessels. Following Jiho's earlier observations about weak points, they concentrated fire on the tentacle connection points and energy distribution veins with brutal efficiency. "This is actually working," Arin said, her voice carrying a note of wonder as she piloted them through another coordinated attack run. "We are holding them back. The evacuation transports are getting through." But Jiho noticed something troubling on the tactical display. While the combined fleet was winning the local engagement around Thelvax, more Vorash ships continued to emerge from the dead zone, and the dead zone itself was still advancing, its darkness creeping across Thelvax's surface, consuming cities and landscapes. "We are treating the symptom, not the disease," he said. "Even if we destroy every Vorash ship here, more will come, and the dead zone keeps advancing. We need to find the source. We need to understand what the dead zone actually is." Taejin's voice crackled over their private channel. "I have been analyzing the sensor data you have been collecting from the Vorash ships. There is something strange about their energy signatures. They are not generating power conventionally. They are drawing energy from somewhere else, like they are tethered to an external power source." "The dead zone?" Jiho asked. "Maybe. Or something inside the dead zone. The Vorash ships that emerged most recently have stronger energy signatures than the earlier ones, like they are staying closer to their source. If we could trace that energy back to its origin point, we could find whatever is controlling the Vorash," Arian finished the thought. Her hands moved over the controls, bringing up long-range sensor displays. "There, at the exact center of the dead zone, there is something there. A massive energy signature, far larger than any ship. The sensors cannot penetrate deeply enough to identify it clearly, but something is definitely there." "That has to be it," Jiho said. "The source, the thing that created the dead zone or controls it, or is powering all these Vorash ships. If we could reach it, we would die," Arin said flatly. "Ships that enter the dead zone never return. The effect is absolute. Whatever is in there destroys anything that gets close." Jiho stared at the tactical display, at the dark area marked as the dead zone, at the massive unknown signature at its center. An idea was forming, desperate and probably suicidal. But it was an idea. Unless the thing destroying ships is the same thing that triggers rage storms in Karvix, he said slowly. What if the dead zone is not a physical effect? What if it is a massive rage storm generator, something that overwhelms the minds of any living crew that enters it? That would explain why probes go silent but are not destroyed. They lose their crew, and automated systems eventually fail. That is a tremendous assumption based on very little evidence, Arin pointed out. I know, but think about it. The Vorash are biological ships, but they are not independent. They are being controlled by something, powered by something. What if that something is a queen or a central mind? What if the dead zone is actually a defensive field generated by that mind, designed to drive away threats by overwhelming them with rage and violence? Arin was silent for a long moment, her eyes scanning the data. Finally, she spoke, her voice very quiet. If you are right, then someone protected by the neural transmitter might be able to penetrate the dead zone without being affected. Someone could reach the center and confront whatever is there. Yes, Jiho said. And you are thinking we should be those someones, Arin continued. Yes, Jiho repeated. This is beyond foolish. This is beyond suicidal. We would be flying into an area that has destroyed dozens of ships, based on a theory you invented in the last 5 minutes, hoping that a device we built in 3 hours will protect us from an effect we do not fully understand. Yes, Jiho said for the 3rd time. But if we are right, we could end this threat permanently. Not just save Thelvax, but eliminate whatever is creating these Vorash ships and advancing the dead zone. Isn't that worth the risk? Arin made a sound that was half laugh and half sigh. My father was right about you. You are either very brave or very stupid. She paused. Or you are human. And maybe for your species, those things are the same. She opened a communication channel to Fleet Command. This is Scout 7. Request permission to investigate the Dead Zone Center. We believe we have identified the source of the threat. Permission denied, came Karvax's immediate response. You will not throw your life away on guesses, daughter. Father, the bonding is real. The prophecy speaks of the soft ones leading us through the void, not around it. Through it. We have to try. There was a long pause. Then Admiral Hana's voice cut in. Jiho, are you agreeing to this insanity? Yes, Admiral, he confirmed. It is the best option we have. Another pause. Then Admiral Hana spoke again, but this time her voice was softer. The Council authorized me to support the Karvix, however necessary. I am interpreting that very broadly right now. If you are going to do this, do it fast before someone more sensible than me stops you. Earth Fleet will continue protecting the evacuation. And Jiho, your mother would be proud of you. Reckless, but proud. Karvax's voice came through heavy with emotion. If you die on this foolish quest, I will never forgive you, daughter. Either of you. Understood, father, Arin said. Then she closed the channel and looked at Jiho. Last chance to back out. Not a chance, Jiho said, adjusting the neural transmitter on his head to make sure it was secure. Let us go see what is hiding in the darkness. Arin pushed the engines to maximum, and the scout ship shot away from the main battle, racing toward the dead zone. The other ships did not follow. No one was brave enough or crazy enough to enter that forbidden space, except 2 people bound by an ancient ritual, following a prophecy that might be completely wrong. As they approached the edge of the dead zone, Jiho felt the temperature in the cockpit drop. The viewports began to show strange distortions, like looking through warped glass. The instruments flickered and showed impossible readings. Beginning to feel the rage storm, Arin reported, her voice tight with concentration. It is strong, much stronger than normal, but the neural transmitter is working. I can still think clearly. I can still fly. They crossed the threshold into the dead zone, and everything went dark. Not physically dark, but the kind of darkness that presses on your mind, that whispers terrible things. that makes you want to hurt and destroy and rage against everything. Jiho felt it too, even though he was human and supposedly immune. It was that powerful. "Stay with me," he said to Arin, reaching out to touch her scaled hand on the controls. The physical contact seemed to help, strengthening the effect of the neural transmitter. "We can do this. We can get through." They flew through absolute madness for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The darkness was full of ghost images, hallucinations, memories of violence and pain. Jiho saw terrible things that he knew were not real but felt real. Beside him, Arin was gripping the controls so hard her claws left marks in the metal, her whole body shaking with the effort of resisting the overwhelming rage storm. But they kept flying, kept moving forward, kept holding on to their sanity by sheer stubborn will, and then suddenly they broke through into clear space. The darkness lifted like a curtain being pulled back, and there, filling the viewport, was something impossible. It was a ship, but calling it a ship was like calling a mountain a rock. It was organic, like the Vorash vessels, but incomprehensibly vast. It pulsed with sickly light, and from its surface extended millions of tendrils that stretched out in all directions, like the roots of some cosmic tree. At its center was something that looked almost like an eye, or a mouth, or maybe both. "What is that?" Arin whispered. "That is the Queen," Jiho said. "That is what is controlling the Vorash. That is what is generating the dead zone effect. That is what nearly destroyed your people thousands of years ago." As if responding to their presence, the massive entity shifted. The eye-mouth thing focused on their tiny scout ship, and Jiho felt a presence touch his mind, ancient and vast and utterly alien. Images flooded into his consciousness. He saw the Vorash as they had been millions of years ago, a species that consumed other species to survive, spreading from world to world like a plague. He saw the Karvix as they had been, driven to near extinction by the rage storms the Vorash Queen induced in them. He saw the soft ones arriving, their neural patterns somehow immune to the Queen's power, using that immunity to help the Karvix resist long enough to drive the Vorash away. And he saw what happened next. The Vorash Queen, wounded and desperate, had retreated into dark space and learned to wait, to hide, to sleep until she was strong enough to return. But her understanding was simple and brutal. Consume or be consumed. Destroy or be destroyed. There was no concept of coexistence, no possibility of peace, only the eternal hunger to expand and devour. "It cannot be reasoned with," Jiho said, understanding flooding through him. "It is too alien, too different from biological life as we understand it. It sees all other life only as food or threats." "Then we destroy it," Arin said, her hands moving to the weapon's controls. "We destroy it now while we have the chance." "Wait," Jiho said. He was staring at the energy readings Taejin had analyzed earlier, the ones showing how the Vorash drew power from the Queen. A desperate idea was forming. The Queen generates the rage storm effect. It powers the Vorash ships. But what if we reverse the neural transmitter? Instead of broadcasting calming frequencies, what if we broadcast the pattern directly into the Queen itself? "What would that do?" Arin asked. "I have no idea," Jiho admitted. "But the Queen is a biological entity. It has some kind of neural system to generate the rage storms. If we flood that system with calming frequencies instead of rage-inducing ones, maybe we can disrupt it, confuse it, maybe even shut it down. Or it might do nothing at all," Arin pointed out. "Or it might make it angry. There is only one way to find out." Arin looked at him, and despite everything, she smiled. "You know, when I woke up this morning, I did not expect to spend the day trying to shut down an ancient cosmic horror using human brainwaves. The bonding has made my life very interesting." "Glad I could help," Jiho said, And he was smiling too, which was insane given the circumstances. Arin programmed the scout ship's transmitters to amplify and broadcast the neural field in a directed beam. Jiho increased the power to the transmitter on his head to maximum, accepting that this would probably give him a terrible headache later if they survived. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The beam lanced out from their ship, invisible but carrying the pattern of human neural frequencies, and struck the Vorash Queen. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The massive entity convulsed, its tentacles whipping wildly. The sickly light pulsing through its body began flickering erratically, and across the space around Thelvax, every Vorash ship suddenly stopped moving, just stopped, dead in space. Their power signatures went dark. The dead zone effect, which had been advancing across Thelvax's surface, halted and then began to recede. "It is working!" Arin shouted. "Whatever you are doing, it is working!" The Vorash Queen's presence withdrew from Jiho's mind with a sensation like being released from a grip he had not known was holding him. The massive entity was writhing now, its biological systems in chaos, unable to process the calming frequencies that countered everything it was designed to do. And then, with a flash of light that lit up the entire region of space, it exploded, not violently, more like it was dissolving, breaking apart into billions of particles that scattered into space, harmless and dead. The dead zone collapsed completely, the darkness evaporating like morning fog under sunlight. Silence filled the cockpit of the scout ship. Arin and Jiho stared at the empty space where the Queen had been, hardly believing what they had just witnessed. Then the communication system erupted with voices. Admiral Hana was shouting for a status report. Carvax was demanding to know if his daughter was alive. Taejin was babbling excitedly about the energy readings. Yunji was crying with relief. "Scout 7 to all ships," Arin said, her voice shaking slightly. "The threat is neutralized. The Vorash Queen is destroyed. The dead zone is collapsing. Thelvax is safe." The response was immediate. Cheers erupted across every channel. Human and Carvix crews were celebrating together. Even the normally reserved species from the Galactic Council were sending congratulations. Arin looked at Jiho, and there were tears on her scaled face. Not tears of sadness, but of overwhelming relief and joy. "You did it. The prophecy was true. The soft ones returned and led us through the void. You saved us." Jiho shook his head. "We did it together. That is what the bonding means, right? We face things together. Your strength and my different way of thinking. That is what the soft ones taught your people. That is what we just proved again." He looked out at the stars, at the space where the dead zone had been, at the fleet of human and Carvix and alien ships working together to finish the evacuation of Thelvax. And he thought about how he had come here just days ago as a simple diplomat trying to make first contact, and somehow had ended up in the middle of an ancient prophecy, bonded to an alien princess, fighting cosmic horrors with brainwaves. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "when I get back to Earth, nobody is going to believe any of this happened." Arin laughed, a sound like crystal bells that Jiho was learning to appreciate. "Then we will just have to visit Earth together and prove it to them. The bonding means I go where you go, remember? Your world is my world now. Your people are my people." "And your people are mine," Jiho agreed. He touched her hand again, a gesture that had started all of this. "I think this is going to be an interesting alliance." "The most interesting in galactic history," Arin agreed. 6 months later, Jiho stood in the same great hall on Velthara where the bonding had first occurred. But this time he was not there as a confused diplomat who had accidentally triggered a prophecy. He was there as the official ambassador of Earth to the Carvix Empire, and Princess Arin was standing beside him as the first Carvix ambassador to Earth. Around them, representatives from dozens of species were gathering. The Galactic Council had called an unprecedented joint session, and the topic was clear. The formation of a new alliance based on the cooperation that had saved Thelvax and defeated the Vorash. Director Quan from the United Earth Council approached them, looking impressed despite himself. Jiho, when I ordered you to come home months ago, I expected to be arresting you for treason. Instead, I am here to thank you for accidentally creating the most powerful diplomatic alliance in Council history. It was not entirely accidental. Jiho protested mildly. Some of it was deliberate foolishness. Deliberate foolishness seems to be a human specialty, Erin added, her vertical pupil eyes sparkling with amusement. I am learning to appreciate it. Councillor Thix approached them slowly, leaning on his staff. The old Karvix looked even more ancient than before, but there was satisfaction in his expression. The prophecy is fulfilled. The soft ones returned and led us through the void. Now begins the age of cooperation that the ancient texts promised, an age where different species work together, where our differences make us stronger rather than dividing us. He placed a clawed hand on Jiho's shoulder, a gesture of respect and affection. Thank you, young human, for having the courage to reach out and touch what you did not understand. That simple gesture of compassion changed the fate of worlds. Admiral Hana joined the group, looking more relaxed than Jiho had ever seen her. The neural transmitter technology is being mass-produced now. Karvix ships are being fitted with systems that broadcast calming frequencies to protect their crews from rage storms. Human and Karvix engineers are working together on the project. It is remarkable how much we are learning from each other. That is what happens when you choose cooperation over suspicion, Yunji said, appearing with Taijin and Doyen in tow. The three of them looked pleased with themselves, probably because they were being hailed as heroes back on Earth. The real test comes next, Taijin added. Now that we have defeated one extinction threat together, we need to figure out how to build a lasting peace. That is actually harder than fighting monsters. Good thing we have experts in both fighting and peace, Jiho said, looking at Erin. Between Karvix warrior culture and human diplomatic tradition, I think we can figure it out. The formal ceremonies began, with speeches and agreements and official recognitions. But Jiho found his attention wandering to the walls of the Great Hall, where the Karvix had added new carvings. They showed the recent events, humans and Karvix fighting side by side, the defeat of the Vorash Queen, the expansion of the neural transmitter technology. And at the center of it all, they had carved an image of a human reaching out to touch the head of a Karvix princess, not as conqueror or ruler, not as superior or inferior, just as one being reaching out to another with compassion and trust. It was, Jiho thought, a good image to build a future on. What are you thinking about? Erin asked quietly, noticing his distraction from the ceremonies. I am thinking about how random chance led to this moment, Jiho said. How one instinctive gesture, made without any real thought or planning, ended up fulfilling an ancient prophecy and changing the relationship between our species forever. That is the nature of prophecy, Erin said. They are not about controlling the future. They are about recognizing the patterns of the past and having faith that when the right moment comes, the right people will make the right choices. She smiled at him. You made the right choice. You reached out instead of pulling back. You offered comfort instead of threat. That is what the soft ones did thousands of years ago. That is what humanity represents now. So no pressure for humans to live up to ancient expectations or anything, Jiho said dryly. Oh, tremendous pressure, Erin agreed cheerfully. But I have confidence in your species. Any people brave enough and foolish enough to fly into cosmic horror with nothing but modified brain waves have what it takes to survive anything. Is that a compliment or an insult? Jiho asked. Yes, Erin said. And surrounded by representatives from dozens of species in a hall carved from black stone on an alien world, Jiho laughed. Because sometimes the best response to the weight of prophecy and the burden of representing your entire species was simply to find the humor in it all and keep moving forward. The bonding had brought their peoples together. The prophecy had been fulfilled. The void had been crossed. Now came the real work, building something lasting from the ashes of ancient conflict, building a future where touching someone's head in a moment of compassion could change the fate of civilizations. It was, Jiho thought, a future worth fighting for, and a future he was honored to help create, one diplomatic gesture at a time. Even if those gestures occasionally involved accidentally triggering ancient prophecies and fighting cosmic horrors with brainwaves. Especially then.